Hello, everyone. Uh, Welcome to this session, and apologies that we preponed the session to 2 p.m. today for some other meetings ahead of this. And a round of applause to all the participants who have till now given us 100% attendance. Jyotsna, could you pull up the screen, and a round of applause if we could actually clap for ourselves. Thank you. Thank you for being so attentive, being so diligent. Thank you so much. Coming back to what we have joined today in today's session. Today's session, we would be elaborated on the behavior change in communication and how it is essential for practitioners and development partners. We generally spend a considerable amount of time and money on IEC campaigns, but do these efforts lead to any kind of behavioral change? Are we very clear about the difference between an IEC campaign, a BCC, or an SBCC? How do we organize a such BCC campaign? Today, we get to know all these differences between IEC, BCC, SBCC, the methods and tools that are used for them. In the later part of the session, we would learn the art of storytelling, especially in relation to the kind of work we do. So with these, I would like to introduce you to my speakers today of the session today. We have Ms. Varinder Gambhir, who is the head of the research of BBC Media Action. She has over 18 years of research experience across India, UK, with focus on generating insights and evaluating social and behavior change communication interventions. Her repertoire includes work on social issues such as health, sanitation, gender, climate change, as well as strategic initiatives for CSR brands. In her current role, she leads the research across various projects at BBC Media Action. We would listen to her from at the beginning, and then at the later part of the session, we would listen to Mr. Tamsil Hussain, who is the founder and CEO of Plug TV, an award-winning creator economy platform that enables anyone to learn, produce, and monetize their stories. Plug TV works with more than 50,000 creators across 22 countries and 12 different languages. While to speak about Mr. Tamsil, who has 15 years of experience working with global tech companies and non-profit organizations. You can also find his writing and interviews on the latest creator economy trends in publications like Tech Circle, LSN Global, CXO Outlook, Media Brief. His stories have also been featured in CNN International, The Guardian, Channel News Asia, and National Geographic. So we begin with Ms. Varinder Gambhir today, and may I welcome Ms. Varinder Gambhir to please take on the dais and speak to our participants. Thank you, Ms. Varinder.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Rajeshi. Very, very happy to be here today. I just, want to quickly introduce BBC Media Action as well before I start with the session today. And Jyotsna, can I request you to put the deck up?
Yeah, Avinash is doing it from our side.
All right. Thank you so much, Jyotsna. Thanks, Avinash, for handling this. Thanks for this opportunity. First of all, like Rajeshi mentioned, I head research for BBC Media Action in India. And BBC Media Action is, the independent international NGO charity arm of BBC. We believe in the power of media and communication to do good. And our work is mainly funded by, donors like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or USAID or H&M Foundation. And today, I'm going to specifically focus on our funding from Gates Foundation on sanitation. We are the strategic communication unit for the national government and the state government and occasionally city levels as well. And I'm going to mainly, rope in those examples where we worked on sanitation to take you all through our journey and, also talk about SBCC. You can move to, yes, thank you so much for that slide. The objective for today's session, like Rajeshi also mentioned, is to, briefly discuss with you all the basics of SBCC, social and behavior change communication, And how does one, of course, it's just an hour. So we will touch upon how to plan, how to implement and monitor a social and behavior change communication campaign. But, I want to keep it a free flowing discussion. So there will also be some little bit of polls and questions added where Jyotsna and Avinash, I think, will be helping me. So, the very first question to you, if you can go to the next slide, or you can share the link, Jyotsna. How are we doing it? Yeah, if you all can
Yes.
please just click on the link, because I just want to understand the mix of the audience today a little bit better before I get into explaining all of these terms. So just click on the link that Jyotsna has shared, and just give your thoughts on, do you think there's a difference in IEC, BCC and SBCC? And if there is, then what do you think there is? What the difference is? So just your thoughts on what it is. It's an anonymous link, so please don't feel free to give in whatever your thoughts are about it. Let's give everybody like about a couple of minutes, and then we can look at the comments we've got. I hope you're all able to click on the link and it's showing the screen. Otherwise, let us know if it's not working. I can see participants typing though. Yeah.
I've pasted the link in the WhatsApp group also, just for ease. You can access it through that. That's fine.
Very interesting. IEC is about the information and communication, whereas SBCC is about how do we communicate to bring the positive change. Really interesting. So, IEC is, of course, information, education, communication. BCC is behavior change communication. I'm just elaborating the acronyms. And SBCC is social behavior change communication. So, if you think there's a difference in these three, it'll be great to know about it. Yes, there is a difference, and the specific purpose of each is different. IEC is a communication through materials. BCC is on the individual behavior. SBCC is also about social circumstances, including individual ones. Very, very close to, I guess, what we are going to be discussing. That's very interesting. Creating an environment and changing behavior. Okay, so Jyotsna, is it possible for me to see all the responses at one go? Or yeah, you can just, I think
I'll
I've
just scroll. Yeah, so I'll scroll from here.
Yes, I've read several of them. Yeah, maybe here. IEC is development of communication material. BCC implementation of that communication material. Okay, and the intention of each is different. Creating an environment and changing behavior is what SBCC aims at. So I think it's very interesting that you all have mentioned about environment when you're talking about SBCC, because you're absolutely right that when we say, so we can move to the slides now, maybe Jyotsna.
Yeah.
This was really, really helpful, everybody. Really helpful for me to, also get a sense of what's in the room. I think we're all, of course, coming from different spectrums. So now, very quickly, let me take you through. I mean, most of you are very rightly, harping upon the environment in the case of social and behavior change communication. So IEC, of course, is, the first avatar in terms of development communication approaches, right? When health programs were first developed, governments believed that if they built clinics and hospitals, people will come to them for these services, right? It's almost like, an offshoot of clinic era of health programming. So, doctors were giving information to a patient and educating them. So they were the experts who would tell, the audiences what to do. So it's pretty obvious that IEC is a one-way communication. It's top down. It's, it's born in the belief that one party is an expert and the other one will listen and comply. But today we know that, it might work in some circumstances where maybe, you're publicizing a scheme, but it doesn't work when it comes to voluntary behavior change, because people are experts on their lives and they want, or they know what they want or they need to do. So I think over time, moving into BCC now, programmers realize that giving people information and educating them wasn't working too well. So, we came on to BCC, which looked at, behavior more closely and realized that there was much more to it than just knowing what to do. It's not really about, knowing exactly what to do, but, you need to have the opportunity, you need to have the ability and the motivation to be able to do it. You should, have the awareness and knowledge and the right attitude to be able to do it, right? So this approach, though, making it slightly broader with the individual, but it still places the entire onus, as you will see, on the individual. But behavior, of course, now we know happens in a context, right? Like I said, many of you also mentioned that it is now about the social environment and the enabling environment, which also really matters. And that is the key difference now, which SBCC brings in and changes. It takes a more holistic approach. It is, looking at both the individual and the individual's context within, performance of that behavior. So it is, taking social and cultural factors that promote or inhibit the recommended behaviors. It is, for example, can we really expect children to, if we're just saying we need to get more children to the school, but we're not considering the environment or context that, a school is, say, 20 kilometers, far from those kids. So it basically brings in those barriers also very much in part as part of the behavior change that we're trying to create. And, it includes the policy and the economic environment within which the behavior change will be performed. Can we move to the next slide, please, Avinash? Thank you. So, SBCC in that sense tells us that in order to sustainably change a behavior, your intervention may have to target the population. It'll have to go broader, target the practitioners, people like us in the room. We need to be brought in to, make that BCC more strategic and work. You need to bring in organizations that, are experts in SBCC and different, suppliers in that sense, because there will be researchers involved, there will be SBCC practitioners involved, there will be technical experts on, for example, sanitation involved. So it brings in practitioners, it brings in organizations, and it brings in systems as well. So this, the socio-ecological model, I want to just quickly discuss this and share this with you. This examines the layers of this influence to provide insights into the cause of the problem. It talks about the culture and networks that influence people's behavior. It, also deals with how people cannot always control the issues that determine the behavior. The decisions about health and well-being, all of this is competing priority that also has to be considered. And in that sense, the personal and environmental factors which are interrelated and influence each other have to be considered. So self is at the center, but it's very important to look at, how I am dealing with my family, with my peers, and, then with the community, and who in the community can help make that, behavior change difference, or help improve my ability to act on it, right? It's very important to not do these things in isolation, but, talking about it at the outset itself. Next slide, please. I want to leave you all, with this definition of social and behavior change communication, because this to me is, bringing in all the different aspects that we just kind of touched upon. So what then is SBCC? It is, the social and behavior change communication that uses communication to shift behavior by positively influencing social and personal determinants. These determinants could include factors within the family or individual, like knowledge, attitude, self-efficacy, and people's confidence in their own ability to practice a behavior, and discussions. We've also seen through our research over years that sometimes awareness, knowledge, motivation, and next comes discussion about the topic before people really act upon it, right? So we've also done some kind of structural equational modeling to kind of arrive at, what is the sequencing of, events that kind of happen. Also important are the social norms, what is seen acceptable in the society, the access, the affordability, like I gave you the school example, right? I mean, what do people really have access to, what they need to change the behavior, and the quality of services, as well as the socioeconomic factors. So I just want to also just add, what we've put at the bottom of the slide really is to harp upon the fact that it's a very strategic communication process, which is evidence-based, it is insight-driven, and it is, impact-oriented. It is, I think the next speaker today will talk about storytelling, but it is impact-oriented storytelling to influence the people and their mindsets. So, it's just very important to harp upon this. My next slide, Avinash, if we can go to the next one, because it's again the same thing that I wanted to reinforce, that it's a process. It's not a, one-time event. We've not just left the audience with a certain message and then expect them to, act on it. It is normally a process. It could be, you all must have heard of human-centric design, right? I mean, that's become like a buzzword now. But SBCC is very much, based on the same principles, where you understand your audiences, you come up with some communication, you test the communication if it's working with them or not, and then, you keep measuring at what level is it working and not working, and keep improving on it, right? And is it making any impact or not is very important for us to see. So it's a process. It's theory driven. Why we've said that is because, there is a lot of time. You have to go back, instead of reinventing the wheel, you first see what, say, in FSSM is the work that's been already done, in sanitation what work has been done, make it, and hopefully, you'll be looking at the sources which are credible and sources which are evidence-based, which have been proven through research that they have worked, and, then kind of strategize on your plan. I want to do a quick poll now. Next slide, please. I just want to know, as communicators and practitioners, do you study your audience? So you all have this on the screen in front of you. If firstly you can tell me, have you studied your audience before developing communication for them? I'm assuming, most of the people in the room, at least majority, would have, developed communication. But do you study your audience, and how frequently do you study your audience if you do it? Have you pre-tested your communication outputs before implementing them? And have your communication outputs been evaluated? This is again for me to, kind of just make sense of where in the scheme of things have we given importance to research, and, maybe sometimes because the budgets didn't allow, or maybe, we didn't feel it's important, we don't do it. So if you guys can just, look at these questions and try answering. Again, this is an anonymous poll, but we just want to know what's the view in the room.
We got 30% of responses, requesting others also to please enter your answer.
It's a great segue for me to, kind of get into research and which all pieces of SBCC, rely a lot on research. So it'll be great if you all can fill this, and then we can look at the answers and, within that context, look at research.
We have about 50%, ma'am. Do you want me to end the poll?
Let's give it another minute, please, Jyotsna, and then we can end.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's look at the results. Okay, so when we talk about studying the audience before developing communication, 33% are saying yes, always. 48% are saying mostly, but not always, which is understood. Sometimes Like I said, it could be budget constraints. It could be that, there is enough information on secondary analysis. You might not need to do a primary research to study your audience. No, mostly, but sometimes, right? Great that nobody said never. Have you pre-tested communication outputs before implementing them? Now, pre-test actually is a research I've seen that not many organizations do, right? Because again, pre-test, means that you've developed something and you want to test it before you scale it up. But it's a almost equal split between always, mostly, and sometimes. And impact evaluation, I see, have they been evaluated? I see that 6% have said never, no, mostly not, mostly, but not always. I think evaluation, while I see that's where we see a divide, 48% have said that they've mostly done it, or almost, 48 plus 24, I think 72% are sitting within done it or mostly done it, while the others are at about 60% in pre-test and about similar in the case of understanding the audiences. So this is great, to kind of know. And feel free to put anything on the chat if you think that it's not always viable, it's not always really required. Any thoughts you have while you're answering the polls, please do also put any of your thoughts in the chat as well. Feel free to do it. But what I want to say today, Avinash, if you can go to the next slide, based on this, is research is fundamental to the SBCC process, right? It is very, very integral to the process, because unless you've understood the audiences, so audience research is exactly what it sounds like. You're researching your target audience to understand their existing behaviors, what are the determinants of these behaviors, and as well as the detailed profile and media habits of your audience. Unless you've understood these determinants, unless you've understood your audience, how do we start developing the communication? And I will give you some examples of how in sanitation, we understood the audience. It told us the barriers very clearly. It told us what was motivating those segments who were motivated, and then how we develop the communication. So through examples today, I will tell you about all of these different researches. But again, to say, now before we start the process of bringing about behavior change, we need to know why our audiences are not doing what we want them to do, right? That's very critical to the process. And the type of research we apply can, of course, range from a detailed ethnography. I mean, it doesn't always have to be, a very fleshed out, expensive research, right? It can sometimes involve a detailed ethnography or, a qualitative immersion exercise, or it could be sometimes a quick quantitative survey to get an understanding of knowledge and behaviors of the audience. Sometimes it could be a mix of both, right? It could, I'm assuming, people in the room understand there's qualitative, which is, not at all structured. You want to understand the deep rooted reasons of why people are doing something that they're doing. While in the case of quantitative, it could be, surveys which are structured and which are, pretty straightforward and can be done by, investigators or even by interns that we can hire. So that can be done. Research can be done with very low budgets as well. But it's important to understand that, before coming up with any kind of communication or what we want our audience to do, it is just critical to understand your audience through some kind of, primary research. And now research is needed not just at the start of the intervention to understand your audiences, to inform your program, but it is a continuous process. We need to be informed about our audiences at every step. For example, now you've, based on formative research, you've come up with a strategy, you've developed some kind of communication. Now, unless we, again, with a small group, it could be 2 focus group discussions that can be done within the audience. But unless we test that, intervention or, our communication before we scale it up, it might not resonate with the audience, right? It might actually be a waste of resources when we scale it up because, people just don't understand what we're trying to tell them. So pre-testing, which is why I think is again very integral to the, SBCC process. And then comes, monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation, in a sense, help you know the direction in which your intervention is going. Is it in the right direction? As well as it helps you measure the outcomes, right? It could be done through baseline, endline. You might have a control group, so as to measure the attribution of your campaign. So if we wanted to change a certain behavior, for example, we want people to build a correct septic tank. We want to measure whether our intervention has made a difference in that behavior, right? Are there more people now when they're building new houses, or they're looking for any house on rent? Are they now looking for information on septic tank at least? So these are the kind of things that will tell you whether your intervention has made an impact or not. Next slide, please. I want to now explain what I'm saying with an example from our work or from BBC. It was important for us to understand. Sorry, somebody needs to put themselves on mute. It was important for us to understand what the barriers and triggers may be in safe sanitation practices amongst our audiences, especially considering that no one knows or cares for what happens to shit after we flush it. Some of the videos that I saw when I joined the call were also all about telling people what happens to shit after you flush it. Poo itself was saying it. The video from BBC Media Action on Flush ke baad kya hua is kind of addressing it, right? But before we came up with this video on Flush ke baad, before we came up with the idea that I'll share with you on Malasur, it was really this research which told us that people are not really bothered about what happens after you flush, right? Within the containment, if you see on the left hand side of this slide, we were focusing on making households aware of this right kind of containment structure and containing the fecal sludge properly, because this came out as one of the problem area in from the research. Households, they build incorrect substructures. Households do not desludge their tanks until they overflow, until there's a crisis. Now, when we knew from research that people are just waiting for the toilet to either backflow, or there is a stench from their toilets or septic tank, or when their septic tanks have overflowed, it was always in the case of a crisis that they were doing it, and they were doing it in the night, right? They didn't want. There's also this social disapproval that matters to people, that my neighbor shouldn't know that my septic tank has overflowed. So these were the kind of things we were getting very good insights on, that social disapproval really matters. So if we tell people through we've also done dramas on this, through drama or through outdoor communication on how your neighbors will kind of judge you on this, or don't wait for a crisis, because then you have to pay more money for it, because then people were paying much more for desludging than they would do if they would do regular desludging. So these were very important insights for us at the beginning of the research, which helped us develop the motivations to act, the behavior, the programs that we wanted people to then get motivated to act for. People opted for convenience. The manual cleaning over mechanical desludging was because I'm used to it. I just call the desludger, he comes and cleans it. And then the other thing was that they're used to mopping off their septic tanks. It's not as clean as they mechanical desludging for them is not as clean as what they're used to. But it was important to create awareness about how manual desludgers, you're putting their life at risk. It was important to tell them about the laws in existence. And then, lastly, the communities are not threatened by open discharge at the moment. We found this out in our, this is a research that we did about 3 years back, that people though know that there can be diseases if the sludge goes into their drinking water, but they are right now not bothered about it going into the lakes and, open grounds. So we had to create that awareness as well. Next slide, please. So, we understood that any gaps or lapses in this operating procedure would cause a chain reaction and consequences to health and environment. We had to make people also understand this. Now, getting into the details of our formative research, we had conducted a mixed method research in 3 cities, Narsapur, Trichy, and Behrampur. And we conducted a quantitative survey with about 1,700 households, and focus group discussions, and 15 in-depth interviews and ethnographies. And our TG was, mainly the key decision maker. So I think the other thing is very important in the room to discuss is that, be very clear on your target group. People that you want to target through communication, of course, are the people that you will study through research, right? So be very, very clear on that. We did it with people who are key decision makers or influencers of FSM practices. We didn't want to keep women out of it because, men mostly take decisions on when to clean the septic tank. But, women have an equal say. they discuss it in the house. So we did a research with both men and women, because they're either decision makers or influencers in the decision. The findings told us that 90% of the respondents were aware that fecal sludge flowing into the open drains can cause diseases, but only 53% were really concerned about it because they didn't know that it's coming back to them in the water that they're drinking. So it was important to know that the awareness about the disease was high, but the threat was not personal or urgent. More than 3/4 believe that tanks should be as large as possible, as it helps in problem avoidance for a long time. Again, another clear finding was that most of the septic tank owners believe that constructing and cleaning septic tank is not their responsibility. They want to just avoid the problem for as long as possible. These findings in general were very instrumental in helping us draw patterns and mine insights about the different segments of audiences that we are looking at. So next slide, please, Avinash. Thank you. So, finally, we could see based on the previous slide on attitude and behavior towards FSM, we could see that there were three broad segments coming out, from the research. Firstly, those whose toilets were directly linked to open drains. Then within the septic tank owners, there were two segments, those who were at least concerned about, sludge in the open causing problems, but were not really doing anything about it. We've called them proactive desludgers because it's this is based, these attitudes, these segments are based on attitude rather than behavior, because nobody was really doing regular desludging, but there were those who are open to it, who are your proactive desludgers. And then the biggest chunk, 66%, were those who are not bothered with it at all, who are a very hard nut to crack and only believed in reactive desludging. I'll just get it done when my toilet backflows or my septic tank overflows, only in the time of crisis. Across all these groups, the predominant attitude was to avoid the problem by building enormous tanks. So, it was very clear to us that our challenge was very clear that how do we make fecal sludge a problem you cannot ignore? All of these people are right now ignoring it because they don't know the effect it's having on them. And we wanted to overcome the challenge of, caring about a common good. There's a common good. If you don't bother and you let your septic tank, not desludge your septic tank, it's going to leach into the groundwater and it's going to cause a problem to the entire community, right? And how do we make the invisible visible? Right now, this is a problem that's invisible to everybody. We had to come up with an idea that made it visible to people. Now, from all of this, I'll now take you through the communication objectives that we had developed based on these research findings. This is, all our formative research, understanding our audiences, which is giving us all of this, the strategy and the communication objectives, which was then to, increase the indiscriminate dumping of fecal sludge, increase the awareness about indiscriminate dumping of fecal sludge contaminating the water and spreading disease. Now, you remember that, while majority were aware that, fecal sludge can cause diseases, but they didn't know how, the indiscriminate dumping in the rivers or what is happening in their environment, or by not cleaning the septic tank or desludging the septic tank, it will be affecting their water. That link was not developed within people. So awareness about the need for correctly built septic tank, as well as the knowledge that correct construction of septic tank is, 2 chambers and a soak pit. We were getting into technical components as well. And at the same time, the motivation to desludge septic tanks once in 3 years. It was very important to come up with, some sort of, we can't just say to people, regularly do it, because again, that has been tried and tested. And if you don't give a time frame to people, then, it could be 20 years for some, it could be 10 years for some. So we spoke to a lot of technical experts in sanitation before we came up with this 3 years figure. Because of course, septic tank can be of different sizes, right? We knew about all of those challenges, but it was important to give that time frame, because if after that somebody's been doing it after 20 years or in the time of crisis, they would at least, be more mindful, and they might start doing it in 6 to 7 years, which has still reduced the frequency, maybe not to 3 years, but you need to give a time frame so that they question their, existing behavior. Now, based on all of this came the idea of Balasur. So now, based on the formative research, based on our, pre-testing, we pre-tested this idea. What we realized is that people are not bothered about fecal sludge, right? And that's why the findings that we saw. And the predominant attitude was to avoid the problem for as long as possible. And because people are disgusted by fecal sludge, right? We wanted to make that disgust more active. We wanted to give it a shape. We wanted people to, know that this could be in their water. This could be something which is affecting their environment. So we did something as dramatic as this. We demonized fecal sludge. We gave it, a visual identity. Uh, a visual identity that they can't get out of their heads, or they can ignore. We used it on wall paintings in Behrampur. We used it on outdoor media in Warangal. This is being then it was scaled up by the central government as well. It was launched by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. It basically brings together Mal, which is fecal waste, as well as Asur, which is the demon. And the inspiration for Malasur really came from Indian mythology, which is full of stories of good overcoming evil. So we wanted people wanted to leave people with something that they could relate to, but they could also not ignore. So we showed them that Malasur is in their overflowing septic tanks. It could be swimming in their open drains and contaminating their water. Our creative strategy was to build up this evil character for the audiences to notice it and consider capturing it, right? You want to slay it. And next slide please, Avinash. Yes, key messages. So in making the invisible visible, water became our natural powerful ally, and we gave people a reason to believe that Malasur is deadly if not ignored. Okay, you are already on this scaled up slide. Okay, I wanted to just, if you can go back to the last slide, Avinash, I just want everyone to quickly note the messages, the right kind of septic tank. This is, the messages are very closely linked to the communication objectives that I took you through, which was coming from the research. Keep an eye on where the poo is going, ask the desludger where he's taking the poo. Clean your septic tank every 3 years for sure. Next slide, please. Thanks, Avinash. Next slide. Yeah. So this is, how Balasur was started as a pilot in Behrampur. We pre-tested it, like I said, conducted a reach and evaluation study. So what you see right now on the slide is, when we had launched it on the World Environment Day, and it was something that, we had provided a toolkit to MAUA, and I think we developed about 165 outputs in 11 languages. So, like I said, it was taken up by the central government, and you can see pictures of wall paintings in Odisha and Telangana, Andhra Pradesh. It was put up on the community toilets. Again, it was on the hoardings. Uttar Pradesh, various states kind of took up this model of Malasur. And if we can go to the next poll, thanks. Now, before I get into, because a lot of this is covered in the primer, SBCC primer, that I'm sure you all, I'm hoping that you all would have gone through it, but if not, it will be great for us to just know if you know about the primer. It was launched, by an FSSM Alliance. How many of you had an opportunity to go through it? And have you started to put it to use? It'll just be good for us to understand the use of the primer, because most of what I'm covering today is actually from the primer. It's like a crash course in the primer. And even if you've not gone through it, after this session, it'll be great if you can open the primer and, go through it. But it'll be good for us to know how many of you have already done it and used it. Sorry if I'm going very fast, because I also know we have an hour to, cover a lot of ground. Jyotsna, how many answers have we got?
We are at 44%. No?
Okay. Should we look at the results?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, how many of you know about the primer? Okay, so majority doesn't know, Jyotsna. I think this is then an important thing for us to take up and share the primer with everybody. Has it not been shared by ASCII?
It was there in the LMS. I think they haven't gone through. So I'll post it in the WhatsApp group for their easy
I
access.
think it's very clear that it's not been shared. Yeah, I mean, they don't not aware of it. So the ones I think who had it have had an opportunity to go through it. I think that it seems like whoever has had it, knew about it, has gone through it because it's 22, 25. And yes, then 19% is a very high number considering that very few know about it. Okay, great. So I think this is very, very helpful, guys. Like I said, it's good for us to know that, majority of you are not even aware of the primer. So let me quickly, Avinash, let's go back to the last slide first. I just want to harp upon the importance of the primer because this is something that the NFSSM Alliance has, jointly come up with. And this is really about, like I said, what exactly is social and behavior communication, how do you, and everything is explained with examples, right? How do you plan, how do you implement it, how do you monitor it, and it's all through sanitation examples, but this is something that you can apply broadly too. It's a toolkit on any kind of SBCC communication that you might do over the years as practitioners, right? Because it's not just limited to sanitation. Though, like I said, examples are mainly from, because it's done by NFSSM Alliance, led by BBC Media Action, from our work on Balasur that I'm discussing with you. And I think even those who weren't aware of it and have not gone through it, I think this session is a great starter. After this, if you will open the primer, many things will be more familiar to you now. So I think you can now, look at it and start putting it to use. Next slide, please, Avinash.
We have one hand raised, ma'am. Would you like to take it now or
Sure.
should we?
Yes,
Yeah.
please. We can take it up right now. I can't see. Yes.
Good afternoon, madam. I am Uday Singh. I am looking after the CYCP Narsapur. Regarding the awareness on the primer, I would like to submit that there should be one exclusive day per month announced by Mahua. On that day, this primer should be very well published or telecasted or distributed in every urban local body. So if it happens for a period of 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, then everybody will come to know that there is a primer and it is giving different messages, including the researching.
Right.
And the second point is that, of course, a very good message we are convening through this primer. But one small point I think we are missing, the way we give importance to vaccination to the children as soon as they get a birth, going to hospital. Similar way, researching should become a common habit and compulsory for every citizen. Already Prime Minister said that Swachhata is not an abhiyan now. It is a Jeevan Shabli.
Yes.
And similar to that message, now we have to pass on. And I think this will give a lot of awareness generation among the citizens. So this is my submission. Over.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Uday, for sharing your thoughts. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, mainly what you're saying is that, how do we make primer as part of, the regular work that these urban bodies will be doing. So I think point taken. I think both, all the alliance members really need to do more about pushing the primer. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And, if anybody else has any question or thoughts, please, keep using the chat as well, because I'm not sure it's 2:43. I'll first finish the presentation and then again try to leave 5 minutes for questions. Otherwise, do use the chat and I will definitely get back at the end of the session. Very quickly on the learnings, right? Now, from what I've, talked about from the research, from the implementation, the main learnings for us that I want to share in this forum also is that each output has to give a single message, right? More than one would be very complicated and you can't share layered messages. I mean, this was again something we know as communicators, but, I can't, harp upon it enough to say that, keep a uni-focused message and don't layer your messages, keep it very simple, relatable for your audiences. No matter, it's sometimes very tempting for us to overload the content. And sometimes when there are so many stakeholders, they try to overload the content. But I would just say the most important thing really for us as communicators is that one output, one message, else nothing will be registered, right? So that was one of the learnings I wanted to share. The other one is every city may be different in where with respect to infrastructure or in terms of supply. So if an FSTP is 2 years away from being functional, you can design your communication and call to action accordingly, right? So just similarly plan your budget, similarly plan your campaign, because each city is different. There is no one size fits all. I mean, this is again something because we worked across different cities, we can say that. But we had this media agnostic idea of Malasur, which applied to all. But then the execution of Malasur was really based on the each and every city's readiness with respect to supply and the diversity with culture. Like in Odisha, Behrampur especially, wall paintings is something which is very much a part of their lives. You go around the gullies and you see these wall paintings. While in Warangal it was not wall paintings, but we wanted to use the hoardings because that was something that we knew more people will be able to see the hoarding. So it was just the media plan also has to be adjusted with respect to the cities, which is third point, that you tailor it as per the touch point which works for that city. Next slide, please. Monitoring and evaluation. Yes. So coming to monitoring and evaluation. Now, before I again, deep dive into this segment, a very quick question for you all, because I want to know how many of you all in the room, think that monitoring is different from impact assessment, and if there is any difference. So very quickly, we'll just give it 2 minutes. Can you share the link, please, Jyotsna? So if you all can click on the link and just share your thoughts. Avinash, you can go to the next slide. I think that's the question. Yeah. How are monitoring and evaluation really different? I have 5 to 7 more minutes of, this is the fag end of SBCC process anyways. Actually continuous monitoring, but fag end of the evaluation. So we'll just give it a minute here, and then I'll take 5 to 7 more minutes, and then we'll take up questions. Monitoring is a continuous process. Regular work and periodic work is evaluation. Interesting. Monitoring is just observing if the output is coming or not. Evaluation is assessment of the output. Evaluation is output of monitoring data, how an activity is going, see the results after the work is complete. Yes. Monitoring is to oversee whether the objective or tools are being implemented as planned. Evaluation is to check whether the tools implemented fulfills the objective or not. Right. Absolutely. Continuous process that is done during or completion, evaluation done usually after the completion of the project. Right. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I think most of you, absolutely right. Monitoring, I would say both are very critical, first of all, very integral to the process of SBCC. Yes, monitoring is, more continuous sometimes, though, even evaluation for that matter, you do a baseline, you could be doing a midline, you could be doing an endline. But yes, it is, more standalone. You go at a point of time and you evaluate the outcomes. The main difference in monitoring and evaluation, I'd say, is, monitoring is measuring your, your activities, your outputs, the indicators, the inputs that you're putting in your, program. And somebody actually also mentioned that it is to track and measure the activities at regular intervals. This could be observations, like some of you also mentioned. This could be primary data collection. And this is really about the quality of implementation. And it's great for any mid-course correction, that not enough teachers are coming to the school. If it's a school intervention where we want to ensure that kids are getting the right education. So if your input is not fine, you're basically monitoring the quality of the teachers, how many teachers are coming, are they attending, are the kids coming to the school. Unless you monitor that, the attendance of teachers in school, and are the right materials being used, you cannot find out the impact on the education outcomes of the children, right? So evaluation in that sense goes beyond the intervention process or the activities and focuses on measuring the outcomes or the impact that you want to create. So it is a research process that tracks the short term and the long term impact at distinct points of time, like I said. And this mostly requires collection at the start of the project to see what is the baseline like, what is the status quo, and then at the end of the project to see what is the difference in key outcomes. If your project is, say, about for 2.5 to 3 years, I would say it's good to also do a midline so that you can do any kinds of mid-course correction as well. But just want to say that both serve a very different purpose and are pretty fundamental to the SBCC process that you have applied. And the other thing is, if you have some data that you can also triangulate with your evaluation data, it will be great to also go get those sources. For example, when we were doing our evaluation on Malasur, or the work that we've done on sanitation, we were also at the same time taking data from the how many trucks were going to your FSM plant to know if the supply side has seen an increase. While we are saying desludge once in 3 years, we were also triangulating data from the actual supply side to see if there is any change there. So it's important to see as much of triangulation, try and get as much triangulation of data as you can. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, the other thing to notice before I get into this example on Malasur is also sometimes you might have to do institutional review board, understand that you're following all the ethics in research, because when you're going to audiences, and especially if it's on a sensitive topic, it's very important to take consent. So just want to leave that thought with you. Coming back to Malasur. Now, we found out from our research that it was a clutter-breaking idea, as especially because there was a negative character, a villain at the center of it. So more people noticed it, and our study, this is from our study in Warangal, which showed that 70% of the people were positively disposed to calling the helpline, because that was the call to action we had left people with. 76% respondents believed that Malasur can be defeated, and desludging once in 3 years came up to be, as one of the most important actions that resonated with people. 68% showed high motivation to act towards desludging. Now, remember that this was the first time that there was a campaign on fecal sludge management, and we were just opening these conversations. So we were focused more on creating awareness, changing people's mindset, and making them, more positive towards acting on desludging. So, from that perspective, it was very positive impact that we saw. Next slide, please. This is again, taking the impact slightly ahead, but we could basically see that it was effective in delivering the key message, as you can see from this slide, of regular desludging. That came out to be as the key message, and people started developing connection between untreated human waste and water contamination as a trigger for the action. So that reason to believe, that if you don't act, you might be contaminating your water, is the one that made that was a trigger, and that was a reason to believe that helped make people act on the messages that we were giving. Okay, I think that's my last slide, which is on the SBCC primer. This is just a teaser on how the primer looks. Many of you mentioned you've not seen it, but this covers the science, art, and craft of SBCC. I've covered, like I said, majority of it today. It was a good refresher, I guess, for all of you. But do go through it and let us know if you have any questions. The floor is open. Any Q&A, we can take it up now. I'll just quickly go through the chat if there's anything. No questions, right, Jyotsna? I think it's mainly answers to
Yeah, right now, no. Avinash, maybe you can pull down this.
Please feel free to raise your hand or add anything in the chat, or any thoughts on the session before I hand over to Tamsil, I think.
Any questions from participants?
I think
I see
Navindra
one.
has.
Yes, sir. Sir, go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. And this is really a very good session. And though I have not gone through that primer, but I will go it. So my one question, normally when we come about the behavior, some of the behaviors that we cannot measure directly, let's say, for example, hand washing with soap. So though we talk about that, but how to really real time monitoring of those indicators, that how many people are washing their hand with soap is possible, because many times we struggle it. So can you throw some light? And there are several indicators also. So can you throw some light how best we can really design our communication campaign so that we can really monitor the impact of those social behavior change intervention that we are putting at, particularly in the rural area? Thank you.
Sure, sure. I think it's a great question, Naginder. Thank you so much for that. So I think you rightly said, not all behaviors are, easy to measure. In fact, I worked on a project on Gavi. It was on vaccination and hand washing by Unilever. And this is exactly what we were trying to change, make more people understand the importance of, immunization as well as hand washing. It was a combined effort by Gavi as well as Unilever. And the idea was to make them understand the importance of immunization as well as hand washing, and hand washing 5 times a day. So we used just to answer on that very example, can others please put themselves on mute? Thank you. So we use different ways. You have to use different surrogates to measure certain behaviors. So what we've done in this case is, first of all, asked people, of course that's claimed response. There's a baseline to ask people, when all do you wash your hands, and how do you wash your hands? And at the time of end line, again the same question. It is critical to ask the same question in the same way to know. Earlier people were saying it before and after food. Now they started saying after toilet and before food. Now they started mentioning some more instances. So on an average, if it was coming to be 3 to 4 times a day, it had increased to 5 to 6 times a day. And the way it was asked was, that, okay, do you wash your hand at this instant? Do you wash it at this instant? So that was one of the ways. The other was observing as well. So there were again questions on where do you keep your soap. These were the surrogate ways of understanding whether they're using a soap or not, and also asking them to show us the packet if they were using soap. We also did observation, something like rural participatory appraisal. There's a technique called PRA. In the participatory rural appraisal, what we had done was we'd gone around the village to kind of see and observe the change in hand washing techniques in these villages. So observation was critical in this case, because claimed response sometimes can be, they know that you came 2 years back or 1 year back and you're coming again, and they kind of sometimes understand. Masking is again something that can really help. So if you're doing a study on hand washing, if you can just put in some questions on, say, climate change or questions on gender, it just helps mask your real intent that you've come here to always measure about hand washing. But you're right, it's not always easy. One has to come through these different ways of measuring it. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah. One more hand raise we have.
Uday
Singh. Uday Singh.
Yes, Uday, please go ahead.
Madam, it's just a submission again. Now we had already done one Malasur campaign. Can we come with a little improvement on it with a 2-minute video? Whereas in a street, a procession is going on Malasur thing, then there are a lot of placards, and one wife and husband, they look into the placard, and then in tune they discuss that there is a lot of unhygiene condition in their house and somebody falling ill. They discuss together and then make a call to 14420, where a septic tank comes and emptying their septic tank. So in video we can show that all the Malasur that is there in the septic tank will go through the pipeline, and the wife and husband, they feel happy and they show their happy faces because Malasur is cleared from the house. This can be in 2 minutes, and the video can be running in a faster mode, and so giving a direct message to the citizens. I think so. I think this will create a very good impact, madam.
Yeah,
So
I hope Gates Foundation agrees with you and gives us more funds to take Malasur ahead in videos. So I completely agree with you. I think we really we feel very passionate about this campaign on Malasur, and we want to also take it ahead. We've already, scaled it up across, like I said, so many languages, so many cities. But yes, it's rightly now. We've also taken it to miking. There are radio jingles that came up on Malasur. There is also a film that came up on Malasur, but this was a film on the value chain of FSM and how Malasur is, has to go from your septic tank to the rightful place. But we've not done something like what you're saying, but yes, I think that's a great idea. I mean, we can definitely look at that in the future.
If these are shared with the ASCII, then we will, I think, amend it with Telugu voiceover and get it redefined.
Oh, brilliant. So I think I can check with Jyotsna if they don't have the film, though it's available. I can maybe, share the YouTube link while Tasleem is taking his session. And yeah, I think everything that we do is open access. So please feel free to use it. Yeah. Thank you so much.
There are questions. We are not
Okay.
leaving you. We are not leaving
I'm looking
you,
at the
Sonali.
chat. Sorry, I'm just
Yeah,
looking at the chat
There's
now.
a question from Sudhaji, and then there are questions from Mr. Rajiv Kumar. Could you take up these questions?
I think Sudha's is more a comment that the alignment
yeah.
between knowledge and practice, which is also very challenging. Absolutely right, Sudha. This is more in line with the previous question, I think, from Nagendra, that it's not just about measuring certain behaviors, like he had said, which is challenging, but also the alignment between knowledge and practice. That, people might know about how to act. So, for example, the Malasur example is well, Sudha, where 90% of the people said that they know that indiscriminate dumping or fecal sludge can cause diseases, but they were still not practicing. Nobody was practicing regular desludging. So there was that gap, dissonance between the knowledge and practice. But that was the challenge, right? As communication practitioners, that's the challenge for us, that how do you, in between knowledge and practice, first change their mindset, make them more positively disposed towards what we want them to change. How do we make the environment more, enabling for them to act, and then, see a change in practice? But also the way they tell you back on their knowledge and their, practice, there can also be gap in that, right? When we are measuring it. So it's important to, do it in the right way. So we're increasingly now using a social desirability scale in our research, which is just to actually, take out those respondents who we know are just giving socially desirable answers. There are scales that have been developed to take out those kind of people. So there are different techniques one can use to get over this. When behavior is not very frequent at the household level, like desludging, how do you communicate that? Yeah, so Rajiv, that is exactly, very rightly you put it, because it's not a very regular thing that people do. And not, so again, first of all, you're talking to the septic tank owners, and we know that people, this is a very deep rooted behavior, right? There've been many households told us that they don't even know when last their septic tank was desludged. Their father or, somebody else from the previous generation had done it, and they don't know it. Or some told us 20 years or 30 years. So it is not at all frequent. So in fact, measuring that you've made a difference to that is very tough. But we could, like I said, though we've given them a time frame of 3 years, we were definitely not expecting, and we'll be harsh on ourselves if we start measuring how many people are now doing it once in 3 years. That's very harsh, right? But what we measured instead was, has the frequency increased? So if people were earlier saying they don't know when it was done, they, maybe it was done 30 years, 20 years back, or, and they were saying now we intend to do it, after there is a crisis. When we saw that now the intention has basically become that, they want to know more about the septic tank. They are now saying that they want to do it once in at least 10 years or 7 years. That's when we looked at the averages, and we know that, you're making an impact to their mindsets. Okay, I don't want to get into the time for the next speaker, but you let me know if I can take the last one. I think it's a comment.
It's a comment, yeah. It's a comment.
It's not a kind of a question.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. You've been a lovely audience. Thank you so much for the interactions. Over to you, Tamsil.
Thank you, Brenda. Lovely presentation. And I also want to just request if Niharika can share her screen. Amazing. So this is a very quick 30-minute session. I'm going to introduce what we do. I'm the founder of People Like Us Create Plug. We run about 3 platforms, which is Plug TV, Let Me Breathe, and Social Saheli. What Plug TV does is it supports average people to create amazing visual stories and see how they can gain financial independence. We constantly train people across different parts of the country, and we turn them into creators. A creator is someone who actually tells their story and earns revenue through it and consistently, passionately tells story on social media. The second platform we run is called Let Me Breathe, which is on climate change and sustainability. And the third one is Social Saheli, which is on rural self-help group women who tell stories to increase their businesses. And what we really do is we power average people to enter the creator economy through storytelling and gain financial independence. Niharika, if we can move to the next slide. Today, we're going to talk about enabling storytelling for inclusive sanitation, right? And the power, what we feel as Plug, and we've been a part of various campaigns and we've seen various things, is the amount of communities that all of you have access to. You can really get them to create consistent content, which can really lower down campaign costs, which can get authentic raw stories, which can reach out to more people, and people can get opportunities to tell unique stories, right? But before I move into this, what is that one thing which I can ask everyone? What does everyone in a city have in common? Everyone who lives in a city, because we work in so many cities, right? And it's a very broad question. But what is that one thing which everybody has in common? You can write it in the chat, or you could just say it. What is that one thing? Citizens, people we work with, everyone. What could those words be? Anyone? Anyone wants to type it down, raise their hand, or I can just call out a participant. Shared spaces, that's a beautiful way of putting it. Yes. And shared spaces generate what? And shared spaces is like we're doing this amazing augmented reality festival in a market so that more and more people come to the market. And it's amazing to see how cities can work, right? Literally in the market. Yeah. So I think if I just simply say it, right? Living place. Beyond this, how do we know that a city is livable and lovable, right? Only when people, now I can move to the next slide, start sharing their stories, right? You share a story on top of a table while you're sitting in a cafe. You share a story when you're walking with a friend. You share a story in a shared space. You share various things, right? And people love to share stories when a city is connected to them, or there are enough enabling factors that can actually help people tell stories. So what we're going to talk about next is what a storytelling campaign is, right? And if you're designing a storytelling campaign, there are three things which are very critical, right? We all have our digital campaigns. We all have our traditional media campaigns. We all have everything in place, but what does a storytelling campaign change? The first part is enabling people to be able to comfortably tell stories and be inspired enough to consistently tell stories. Then once they've told their stories through video, through audio, through written, how do you make sure you create and package things that can reach out to the right people? And then the last part, which is very important, is dissemination, having the right medium to do it. And we're going to find out all these three things through a lot of case studies today, which is very quick, but how people have done it already, which could be a great learning for a lot of us, right? The difference between an existing campaign on social media and a storytelling campaign is very different, right? Right now, most campaigns are driven by algorithms, which means if you're putting up a video on Facebook, you can only reach out to XYZ people unless you create a video in a certain format, which reaches out to people, or you put money behind it. If you're on YouTube, you need to make sure that you have a thumbnail, you have SEO titles, you have various things to make sure that a video can reach out to people. The power that a low-cost storytelling campaign does is you have real stories which people want to connect with, right? So you're able to jump the algorithm in a smart way where it can reach out to more and more people. And most stories which go viral on the internet right now have just a lot of despair. Anything which is shocking, provocative, goes viral. But stories, if you're designing a storytelling campaign, building radical hope really changes the way people connect with it. And most of the viral things that you see online are connected to this one moment where you would have 3,000 people posting about the same thing because they're either like agitated, happy, or sad. What a storytelling campaign does is throughout the year, our various communities can consistently tell stories, which turns into a movement where whenever moments are there, people can come together and really create that beautiful change that we want to see. So the three types of storytelling campaigns that exist are short-term, which last for 1 month to 2 months, which means you can have some people who share their stories supported with digital assets, which is a short-term campaign. A long-term campaign lasts for 1 year, which means if you have right from the part of you researching and talking to community to the part that a campaign is live, you can consistently build a community that tells stories online. And when you have your big social media moment, it really changes the way people engage, and it drives more and more users to view the content that you're seeing. And lastly is a big audacious moment. A long-term campaign and a short-term campaign both have a massive audacious moment, which means you put in all your time and effort into creating a big social media moment, either on one platform or on multiple platforms. And it really changes the way people connect with an issue that they might not understand, which is the issue that we connect with, right? Like it's very difficult to reach out to people who have no idea about FSM, right? And this is what these three types of strategies do. So let's look at a couple of case studies, right? The first one being a strategy, which is digital, social media, and offline, which is a very popular campaign by UNICEF, which is Pootaloo. It had a mobile game, it had like a website, it had offline activations, it had social media, which generated so many conversations. But it was an expensive campaign, right? Which means there were so many resources connected to it. It was lovely, people connected with it, it is provocative, it's very appealing. Let's look at the second campaign, right? And this is a campaign which was done with Star TV. This is something we did with Star TV, where we had about 20,000 community storytellers who were consistently engaged for 1 year. And this is on air pollution, right? And Star TV engaged all their actors and actresses to share stories on their own profiles as well. So in 2 days, 128 people were reached out to and engaged. It was trending on social media, but the preparation of it was the community was enabled throughout the year. And by the time they were able to connect with celebrities and share similar stories on one topic, it was such a big audacious moment on social media that it literally controlled the air pollution conversations across the world. And it was a perfect mix of broadcast, social media, and a lot of organic. And all of this is organic. No money was spent on ads, right? And it really changes the way how people were engaging because it was such a big moment, right? On air pollution where nobody even imagined it. Star TV also played some, they had created some fiction films for their own like broadcast channel, which those numbers are not included here, but this is just pure social media, organic visual stories. The last one being, what can a mobile phone contribute, right? We had trained about a lot of community members who were close to toilets, right? To be able to record their own story using their mobile phone and audio. And there was this moment when our Prime Minister was going and talking about sanitation at the Goalkeeper Conference long back. We had about 8 episodes, right, which were literally shot, edited, released in a span of 72 hours across all social media platforms. And for the first time, we saw a community telling their own story about toilets. Niharika, do you think we can quickly play a bite? Do we have this?
Yes, we can play it.
Right? And I'm going to tell you a little background story around it, which is what I loved, like when this happened. Are you playing it, Niharika? This is
पहिला थिएन अब अहिले छ सुविस्तै हुन्छ हो अब सबै घरमै हुन्छ अहिले त पहिलाको छैन अहिले हो अब सबैजना सिके उइस गर्नु हो ठिकै छ अहिले राम्रै छ सबै सुविस्ता हुन्छ अहिले पहिला त दुःख हुन्थ्यो टोयलेट थिएन त्यति साह्रो विशेष गरी बस्तीमा दुःखै हुन्छ अलिकति हो बिमारीहरू हुन्छ बुढोहरूको लागि चाहिँ
So you can pause it, right? You see, this is a story which is shot in very rural Sikkim, where a creator was able to go with just a mobile phone and find women who could talk about how toilets have changed their lives forever. And such stories were recorded in 8 different cities across India. And one such example, which is what I love sharing, is we have this Asha worker who was shooting a story, but when she was shooting it, there was no internet. So what she used to do is she used to climb up a hill and go and actually share the footage with us so that it can be edited in a different way. And like she could get feedback around it. And she has to literally walk for a kilometer to record these stories passionately and completely change the way she looks at her own mobile phone because she knows she can create amazing stories. Now, if we look at the potential for this and the power that we have, all of us present in this room, there are about 4.2 billion social media users across the world, right? And out of which 200 million people consider themselves as creators. And what we tell every organization and everyone that we work with, the communities we have the potential to become creators where they look at social media in a way that they're telling their stories. And it completely changes the way that they view social media because they look at themselves as a creator and the potential is huge. There are 200 million people who call themselves creators, which means they look at social media to earn revenue, to see how their stories can travel. And if we can enable our communities to do this, it completely changes the way all campaigns are run, right? And also generates livelihood for them. So if we go on the next slide, Niharika, the other digital formats that possibly you already know are obviously one is infographics, which we can just see. I think all of us use this, correct? Yes, no, if I can just say that. Everybody uses infographics. Big data can be converted into very simple visual things, which all of us use. It's a very engaging thing, right? But how far does it really travel on social media, right? And as we move forward, everything is becoming video first more and really, really fast. So we go on the next one. This is a really, really amazing format, which all of us have seen. I think all of us have seen Instagram Reels. All of us have seen short form stories. And once a story which BBC had this amazing show called Life Navrangi, I think all of us have heard. And we were working with a community of female desclosures, right? And this was in Patna, where this reel was recorded to support that show. So Niharika, if we can quickly play this one. And it's amazing. If you see the camera presence, the way it's done, it's very different. Yeah.
सेप्टिक टैंक भरा हो या छोटा, हर 3 साल में उसको साफ करवाना ही करवाना है, नहीं तो निरसन वाला सुर बन जाएगा। जब घर के नीचे सेप्टिक टैंक में खूब सारा पॉटी जम जाता है ना, आंटी जो है ना वो सेम डेंजरस मास्क को पकड़ के अपने साफ ले जाती है। काम तो मेरा लक्ष्मी बाई वाला है, मेरा सुपर पकड़ना। आपको क्या लगता है मैं सुपर हीरो हूँ? बैटमैन, सुपरमैन मेरे बच्चे देखते हैं तो क्या मैं भी सुपर हीरो हूँ?
Now it's taking these amazing shots that the show already has and connecting it to a real community voice, right? The same way a lot of influencers also created content around the same thing in different ways. Do we have anything else that we want to show on this, Niharika? We can move to the next one.
Yeah, we can move to the next one.
Okay, great. And one of the things which really help, and I think this was someone was stating an example that if we can talk about a video that can go, and if we are able to record these stories ourselves, explaining it, these are explainers which are long, which really explain the content in a very deep-rooted way. And it stays longer on the internet because everybody searches for an issue and they want to go back to this video, which makes it very easy. And one of our favorites is community stories. We've done this with issues of tuberculosis, sanitation, climate change, sustainability, gender, really complex issues. Even like, for example, even Samsung has used community stories with all the franchisees that they have in India. So people and brands are really beginning to believe that community real stories can really change the way people understand content. So imagine if an ambulance driver is telling a story versus a person who's not connected to ambulances or medical. It really changes the way because people get a lot more trust in the stories that they're seeing. And it also helps people empower more people in their community. And what a community member gets when they share their stories is the pattern is very simple. Like the first one is that friends and family see the story and say, wow, this is such a great story. The second is that within the state, once the story starts traveling, people say, oh, are you the person who created the story? And slowly it becomes a national thing. And it's this beautiful social capital that each and every community member has the power to build. And the more skills they learn to edit, tell their stories in a different way, it changes the way people do it. You want to see an action-oriented community, and we're going to see this beautiful example on how people can tell stories in creative ways themselves. And once you unleash that creativity, they're able to do that in a very good way. Now, if we can go on the next slide. The kind of formats that I've talked about, short form video is one of the most popular formats because of Instagram Reels and because of the formats of short form storytelling, where you can connect data and see how people connect with it. You need to know that when a user is creating on trend, it's a user generated content that is created by thousands and thousands and sometimes millions of people. So if your trend is attractive enough, it can actually power citizens to create content on something that they connected with in a very beautiful way. Long form content video has way more resources right now to be played, not just YouTube, not just Vimeo, not just Facebook. Amazon Mini and a lot of other OTT platforms are looking at long form video that can be connected onto their platforms because they need content. And if you can create unique content that can go up on these platforms, your reach becomes even more. Tweets is one of our favorite mediums because in local languages, when people tweet, it reaches out to more people. And because there's a lack of credible voices in localized languages, and it's a great source of doing that. The Cleaner Everyday campaign was really powered on Twitter, where you could use tools to automatically generate conversations. There's a tool called Twitter Card, which really helps people create citizen-generated voices on the issue that you believe in. Stories is something which is amazing for behind the scenes. We're working heavily on audio and podcasts because it's the easiest medium. One of the podcasts, to give an example, we did with adolescents called Ankahi Baatein, which was on sexual and reproductive health, and it was meant to be played in schools and spaces in form of audio that people can understand really complex issues around sexual health. And this was in a small village in UP. And we've seen the power of it. It is now on Saavn, it is now on Apple, it is on various platforms, which is created by these students who learned how to use their mobile phone and create a powerful podcast, right? Live really works amazing for events, and there's a certain way to tell live, but it really connects the community in a stronger way if you have a very engaged social media community. Next slide, Niharika. So some of the platforms you already are aware about, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, but Snapchat is amazing for similar real type of content. And at the same time, it's one of the most powerful apps for camera. The way Snapchat uses camera, it has about 343 million active users. In India, it's grown a lot during COVID. Augmented reality is amazing. We've created augmented reality lenses for people who are working on various areas that are very hard to reach. And in India, the difference is that you have regional apps which have the strongest hold in the regions which big platforms from outside India don't have. So ShareChat, Moj, Public, Daily Hunt, Josh, all of these support short form content, and the kind of engagement you get is amazing. We've seen ASHA workers from UP engage on content created by ASHA workers on Bihar on these platforms. We've seen people actually have relatable conversation in comments of videos because they relate to it in a big way on these regional apps. It's Hindi first, it's Telugu, it's Tamil, it's various languages first, which people find it much easier to connect with, right? So I think this is something you can take a quick picture of if you want as well. And one of the things that if you want to start your own storytelling campaign, I think the first thing that Niharika, if we can move on the next slide. If you really want to start your own thing, I think the basics that we can really look at is how you can update your social media profile. You need to know that building credibility and trust is important, that your bio is updated, your picture is updated. Try and do one post a day, which people can relate with it, and target 12-year-olds, so that you can simplify the messaging as much as possible. There's a lot of conversations on trolling and all those things. I think the easiest way to do is to form an SOP where you can easily build a policy which helps you block trolls and really get the messaging right. There are various standard operating procedures, which I'm happy to share on social media as well. Now, when it comes to creating your first story, and this is what I would say, it's not rocket science. We don't have much time, but we could have live done it, is you just start with your mobile phone, focus on 3 important things. Is the light on your face or is the light behind you? Like right now, my light is really bad. So you see like a little dull picture because I'm not sitting in the studio. But if I had light on my face, you'd be able to understand it better. My audio must be clear. If you don't have resources to buy a mic, you can use earphone mics, which come with every phone, which makes it much easier. And stability of camera. If you're talking to a phone like this, your screen will capture a very shaky thing. All those stories you saw was shot on phones. So holding your camera still makes it much more powerful for people to understand you. And there's a way to do this, right? And sharing everything you know in very simplified terms is amazing, but if you have an example that people can relate with, it really helps people connect with your story and data much better. We don't have much time to do fact checking, but fact checking is something that we train each and every community with. We have about 50,000 creators across the world. Each and every person knows how to fact check their stories and know the mechanism on how to check it. There are lots of tools on Google, there are lots of tools on Facebook, which really help you check videos and images very quickly. If there are any questions that people have, we'd be happy to take them, but let's watch one story, and I'm going to give you a background. This is Dr. Naveen Thakur. He's the president of Indian Pediatric Association. He's one of the first people to get vaccinated on COVID. Everybody was creating very basic videos that vaccines are safe, everything you could do. And he created this video, which was retweeted by Ministry of Health, which is retweeted by various people and became massively viral. And let's see why. And I'm going to ask everybody a question as to why do you think the story became really, really viral? Yeah.
मेरा नाम डॉक्टर नवीन ठक्कर है। मैंने शनिवार को कोरोना की वैक्सीन ली है। आप देख सकते हैं मैं पूर्णतः स्वस्थ हूँ, किसी तरह का भी मुझे साइड इफेक्ट नहीं हुआ है। कोरोना वैक्सीन पूरी तरह सुरक्षित है। जब भी आपका नंबर आए, आपका टर्न आए, जरूर से कोरोना वैक्सीन लें, क्योंकि वही एक तरीका है जिससे हम कोरोना को मात दे सकते हैं। और इतना याद रखिए, जब तक भारतवर्ष में ज्यादातर लोगों को वैक्सीन।
And he rides off in a cycle. Can anyone tell me why did the Ministry of Health retweet this specific thing, right? Any questions? Anyone has suggestions? Why was the story so relatable?
We have one hand raised by Mr.
Yeah.
Uday. Yeah.
So that.
Uday, sir, go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for letting us know how to make small videos. So I was also making videos from Narsapur. So I have taken your suggestions, sir. I purchased a small mic which has about a 10-meter length. After this, all devices I recorded in a very excellent format, and a small stand to hold my mobile phone exactly opposite to the face of the interviewer. So that also given very good picture output. The one thing I would like to bring before you and all the persons attending this Zoom, the message, whatever is going to be given by the person, I have written it on a plain chart in a small pieces and displayed to the interviewer so that he will not be any confusion while speaking. And I keep on replacing the charts one by one within that 1 or 1.5 minute video, so that whatever the message he would like to give with very clarity, I could able to record. So that is one of the cautions that I have taken, and I was very much successful. And thank you very much for informing more.
I hope that, like, your stories reach out to more and more people. And I think if you have specific questions on how to make sure these stories can reach out to more people, it's amazing. I think I love the technique that you have on chart papers, and storyboarding really helps in simplifying it, right? But just to finish the previous question I asked, and I think Rajiv Kumar, it's such the answer that you have established. We already know that Dr. Naveen Thakur is a credible doctor, senior citizen, and there were so many doctors who were creating content like this, but him riding a bicycle, a 12-year-old child could connect with it. A lot of times we get so lost in the storyboards we have, in the information we want to give, we forget how creatively we can do this. Like his journey, Dr. Naveen Thakur's journey was 6 months long, where he was creating simple content, and it ended up being so engaging at a level which we haven't seen before. And as Uday said, he started off like this as well. And you can keep experimenting with so many storytelling formats to really improve it. But the real power is, if you are able to also enable your communities that you work with, maybe the data that you're collecting while you're going for research, maybe the community who's helping you do this, just remember one thing: they're not only going to tell stories on sanitation. They can tell stories on things that they can connect with. It's a livelihood source that will become for them. And every time they create content on sanitation, it'll become more and more creative if we are able to enable these communities in a very powerful way. So the first step is to enable yourself. And then the second is to really see how we can enable communities, because we have that power over social media because we have access and connect with these communities. And it's very important to do this. Just quick tips before we can take more questions. The most important part for any storytelling campaign, be it digital, be it PR, is authentic, real voices, which we have a lot because of our communities. Budget. The thing about this kind of campaign is you don't require a massive budget, right? You require time and strategy, which is completely transforming the way the results of every piece of work you will do. The power of influence is done in two ways. You can actually reach out to existing influencers, which a lot of people do. The second is you can create influencers by training your communities, which is what I was mentioning. The freedom to mix and match is amazing here because you have so many stories to choose for. You don't have to hire a team who would go and shoot your story. You can have a community mix and match and really create powerful impact online. Organic reach is very hard to get these days because you realize that the content doesn't reach out to a lot of people. But imagine if you have, like for Clean Air Every Day, we had 4,000 people who tweeted together in 1 hour and it was trending. And they were tweeting everything and anything that they could tweet. But it took time. It took us a year to train that community that they're ready for doing that, right? And you work with the community so much that it makes it easy. Diversity of content becomes very important. The best strategy is if you have a mix of short form, long form, various pieces of content really helps you do this. Just remember, you have the potential to build newer champions. There might be some community members who are really amazing on ground, but those community members who are great communicators will get opportunities and they can become online champions. And the most important thing is in FSM, if you can put a real story to your data, it changes the way you can connect with audiences. And the last one is you can have a completely new communication strategy. It is so innovative, so creative. We tell this to everyone. Anyone can do this. And if you want to see a lot of stories, you can just simply scan this code and you'll be able to find a lot of people who've used these communication strategies. Like I mentioned, right from Samsung to smaller nonprofits, everybody's going for community strategies. I would love to take more questions like, or even suggestions as Uday shared. It was such a great tactic that he shared.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tamzeel. That was really engrossing. I loved it. Thank you. No questions from me, but the participants, if you have any questions or any suggestions, as Tamzeel said, you could actually open your mic and speak up.
Yeah, I'd love to know how you use your mobile phones right now. It'd be very cool. This is such a powerful device. It's unbelievable. Anyone who wants to share how they use their mobile phones as well, anything. Okay. Oh, any study done on, oh, Rajiv, you would be surprised. Can I share this? It would be during COVID, the most powerful medium was a QR code, right? From stories to website links to the most powerful things, right? Now, there's a massive behavior change that has happened in users. And these are not just specific kind of mobile users, but everyone who owns a mobile phone knows how to scan a QR code. They can identify it, they can connect with it. This is because of the COVID push that was done across the world. So the behaviors have changed and QR codes is a very powerful medium to connect with it. But just remember one thing, you saw the way we shared our QR code, we had it big on our screen. A lot of people make that mistake where they have little QR codes or 4 or 5 QR codes where people can do it. Make sure you just have one QR code. When people scan it, take them to different sites from that landing page of the QR code. So yes, there is studies and there's a user behavior change that has happened on QR codes after COVID. Any more questions?
I mean, it'll take some time for people to come up with questions, I'm sure.
Yes.
And we will come back to you with all the set of questions post the session what we receive.
Can I answer these two questions, Rajshri?
Sure, sure, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
The
Go on.
effectiveness of convention posters and leaflets is still there. So that I can tell you that in the amount of projects we've done in Patna and we've seen in Bihar, we've seen that leaflets and posters need to translate offline. So if you have a WhatsApp number, so I'll give a quick hack, right? For Social Saheli, we had very simple posters with one WhatsApp business number where it went viral on WhatsApp. Someone clicked a picture of that poster, shared it on WhatsApp groups. It went viral amongst 5,000 self-help groups, and everybody said that I want to learn how to tell stories for my business. And they all had that one landing page. So if you can build the connect between online and offline, your posters can do amazing. ADB, Sprinto, basically all of these strategies I'm talking about are peri-urban and non-urban. All the communities you see are in localized languages. These strategies work better in peri-urban and non-urban because the urban audiences already understands a lot of things. So the skill building aspect is so new for peri-urban and rural audiences. It's really exciting. Yes, Rajiv, we will definitely catch up. We will be in Patna very soon. Thank you so much. And thank you, Rajshri, for having me as well.
Yes, Rucha, you had a question. You
So
raised your
I
hand.
have a, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I have a sort of a different question. So sometimes when, like, how do you detect a story is the question I want to ask. So when you're going about your life, how do you see the content is my question, because a lot of times I struggle with finding ideas or, what to put out in social media. So we go about our life and we do things and we think about things, but how do you detect a story is my question.
That's such a powerful question. And if someone had asked me this question 15 years ago, I would give you such a creative reply. But I think my behavior is so different that I'm constantly seeing stories. I can see a story in this stuffed toy. I can see a story with a V, and I can build around it. I think the first, if you're connecting the story to your program, there are so many stories in the reports and data that you already have, which have not been told, right? It's not timely information, but you can really retell what's written on your reports and connect it to real stories. The best part about identifying stories when we train community members is we ask them to share their own stories, and we see that how powerfully people would connect with those stories. So it just makes the community training aspect makes it much easier for you, because communities have stories which are varied and they're not necessarily connected to sanitation. So I think just not limiting yourself to one issue and being open to see how many other issues, like I think we mentioned on someone mentioned masking. It's amazing to see how masking can connect with us, because as a human being, I'm not only going to tell sanitation stories, right? I have a story of maybe how I save money, right? Maybe I have a story about my brother. Maybe I have a story about something, an animal I saw. All of those stories are important. And the power of social media is that all these storytelling formats allow you to share any type of story. So if I see like a cute cat, I want to share it on my story format, which is 24 hours. It'll stay for 24 hours and it'll go away. But if I see, if I want to tell a story about my brother, maybe I want to make a reel about it. And if I want to talk about sanitation in depth, I might want to make a long form video. So I'm just giving you an idea. If you can find simple stories connected to the format, you would find it more comfortable. And the most powerful thing is that you get feedback on how good your story is when people react and like your stories. So yeah, but the biggest lens you can see is that story going to inspire anyone or provoke anyone? And it's the easiest way to find out. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. So that was
Thank you, Rucha. I'd love to see your story someday. Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
That's it. I think I've taken 8 minutes more. Sorry, apologies. And
it's all right.
Yeah.
It's all right. So there's a question. I mean, is it a question? Let me read. There are multiple social platforms. How does content developers decide to place his time on the platform?
On the platform. I think that's a very, very important question. As a content creator, as a content developer, one thing you got to keep in mind is formats. right? There might be multiple platforms, but the same format can be put on those platforms. So you invest energy. Let's say you're creating a video for 30 seconds, it can go up on 8 platforms. Right from Instagram to Josh to ShareChat to Moj, various platforms. The way you budget your time is to see what format can be repurposed on various platforms. And as an organizational strategy, let's say if I want to reach out to audiences which are mainly Hindi, I will prioritize regional platforms over other platforms, right? Because the algorithms and all the other platforms are really focusing on urban audiences, and you would see rural audiences and peri-urban audiences creating content on trends that would reach out more and connect with the urban audiences. The power of regional platforms is that it's targeting regional audiences in their own language, right? So it's clearly dependent on the strategy that you have as an organization to see how you want to do that. And as a content creator, what I can tell you, the power is repurposing content. One content that can be repurposed in various formats will save you time, money, and get you phenomenal results.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Tamsil, I guess we are well above our time limit. I would like to conclude the session today, thanking all the speakers as well as the participants for taking out the time a bit earlier than the usual. And then to talk about the next time, of course, for today's sessions, if you have any questions, please use our Slido. Please use the WhatsApp group so that we can collate the questions and reach out to our speakers who have spoken today. And then for the next session, we are again meeting on 26th. Of course, it will be at 4 o'clock. Today, there was something, urgent, so that we had to prepone our time. 26th, again, we meet at 4 o'clock with monitoring, learning, and evaluation session.